And how do I see beyond where I'm currently at? When I have this whole list and this whole host of adversity standing in front of me. And if we can envision being at the start of the bridge and looking across the bridge, and you see all of this nasty, ugly, horrible, scary, stressful stuff in between. What is your why and what is your reason for taking the step?
Yeah.
You're looking at somebody who struggled with a severe learning disability my entire elementary, middle, and high school career. I sent Brother Staples a copy of my high school transcript where my class ranking was 382 out of 445.
Wow.
GPA at one point was a 1.36, and it took me 5 years to graduate from high school. But what provoked me, despite seeing the learning disability, despite having to contend with the limited expectations that so many other people had spoken over my life. For whatever reason, I had this dream of being able to get my education. I really couldn't process all the way what I read. I spoke horribly. I struggled tremendously to write. But I'm at the start, but I have this dream of getting my education. But as I'm looking across the bridge and as I'm looking at the journey, I'm looking at all the things that I'm going to have to maneuver through and overcome in order to get to the other side. And I had to ask myself, what is my why? For what reason would I have the audacity and what reason would I have the nerve to do something, to think that I can do something that everybody else has already told me could not be done? How do I get to the other side of this bridge? And lesson number one is that you have to have and you have to establish your why. And your why has to supersede and be more important than just you.
Yeah. Talk about that. Yeah.
The gift, the plan that God has for you, Jeremiah 29:11, the specific intention that he has for you, Jeremiah 29:11, that plan and that intention was not to just bless you. So as I sat here as this kid, this dysfunctional kid who struggled in school all of my life, I'm 3 classes away from having a master's degree. But what was my why? Well, what was my why? What gave me the nerve to even think that it could be done? So my why was this at the time. My why initially was my son. So when my son was in school, I began to see some of the same struggles, academic struggles, in my son that I myself went through. So remember, the plan, the intent that God has for you is not just for you. It's to bless the world around you. So as I began to see my son struggle, I'll never forget, I remember it like it was yesterday. My son came home, tears in his eyes, tears running down his face, and my son said, "I hate school." My son said, "Man, I'm not smart. I can't do it. I hate school." So without even thinking about it, I told my son, I said, "I'm going to show you and I'm going to teach you through my example that anything that you are willing to fight for, anything that you are willing to work for, that it can absolutely be done." So as my son sat there crying, sitting on the couch with tears in his face, I made this promise, this declaration to my son. I'm going to show you through my example that it can be done. I went the very next day, I got my high school transcripts, I brought them home and I showed it to my son. Absent 45, 50 days in a school year, GPA of 1.36, D's and F's scattered all over the transcript. And I presented it to my son, and I said, I'm going to show you by my example that it can be done.
That's right.
The very next day, I go down to Cincinnati State, and I register for my first college class.
Yeah.
Since being in college, I started out with an associate's, then it went to a bachelor's, and now I'm 3 classes away from a master's. But it all started out with a dream. And the why and my reason for pursuing that dream, it had to be greater than me. So I learned along this particular journey, how do I keep from dying on the bridge? How do I keep from aborting my dream between the start and the finish? How do I keep from forfeiting the plan that God has for my life in this in-between phase? And lesson number 1 is you have to have a very important why that's bigger and more important than just you.
Amen.
Don't pray and ask God for money just so that you can get out here, man, and flash and floss and engage in
Preach, brother.
materialism.
Preach.
You ask God for financial resources so that you can break generational curses of lack
Yes.
and famine.
Yes.
You ask God for financial resources so that you can finance your kids' education
There you go.
yourself instead of them having to take out astronomical
go.
amounts of student loan debt. You ask God to bless you so that you can be a blessing to others.
Yes.
What is your why? And your why has to supersede reasons more important than you.
Yes, sir.